Erased Destiny. Chapter 12. Actor or Traitor. Jargon rose from his bed shortly after dinner time, sore, frozen, and reeking of fish guts, the smell of which managed to soak every item of his clothing. He changed his clothes as the very first thing. He felt hungry, so he checked if something edible was left in the kitchen. He found his mother there, also hungry, sipping her evening tea.
Cyril rode to Sintra. Some problem with supplies that he need to solve urgently. Better not leave the house today. Several dangerous criminals have escaped and guards are patrolling all the streets, so we cannot go to any restaurant. What would you like to eat? Sandwiches. Scrambled eggs. Maybe an omelet.
Thank you, Mother, but I'm not hungry. I'll have a drink of water, some fruits, and go back to bed. I think I caught a cold.
Feeling bad? Then I prepare herbal tea for you. Are you sure you don't need a healer?
Jargon didn't want to admit that he suddenly felt ashamed of his own obesity. He decided to lose some weight, take more exercise, eat healthier. He disappeared behind his bedroom door and Joanna stayed in the kitchen. She was worried about her only son's condition, the all-night fishing that had obviously strained his frail body. She also thought about Cyril and the issues he had to solve urgently, but in logistical terms, when he would return, whether she would have enough clean clothes, whether he had left them enough money for a comfortable and stress-free holiday. Jargon didn't care much about their living conditions. He was curious about the reason for his father's sudden departure and his connection to the fugitives prowling the seaside village. The boy created the illusion of himself lying in his bed and went out onto the terrace. Trying not to make any noise, he climbed onto the roof of the rented house and sat there. After a while, he straightened his legs, rested his head on his shoulders and his back against the wooden beams. He looked up at the sky, at the stars shining brightly above him, happy at the lack of a ceiling obscuring the garnet of night. In his entire life, he had never gone outside at night to admire the stars. The only thing he lacked for complete happiness was Marigold. He already had a horn that would surely interest his friend. He thought, what else could he surprise her with? At dawn, Jargon went for a walk along the seashore. The crunch of the sand under his bare feet, the squawk of birds, the almost white rays of the sun sparkling on the surface of the water. All this put the boy in a great mood. During the night, he came to the conclusion that his despondency stemmed from being confined to an old, gloomy house, where he saw no one but the servants. He decided to change his life, starting by moving out to the vineyard. The property, almost adjacent to Sintra, offered better prospects for a teenager looking for his place in the world, and the lack of servants caring for him made it possible to become at least partially independent and lose weight. Jargon's changes began with his closet. He went down to the market, where most of the goods were freshly caught fish, in search of something not black. Anything different from Jargon's daily attire was good enough for him. He let a persistent trader talk him into sand-colored linen pants and a navy blue shirt, topped off with light sandals and a belt. Jargon insisted on wearing a belt, even though the belt didn't fit the holiday outfit in any way. The boy threw his old clothes in the trash and intended to do the same with all the rags chosen by Joanna. After thinking about it, he pulled his pants out of the garbage. With a knife, he cut off the legs below the knees and threw the garments so altered over his shoulder. He planned to take sea baths in it, so as not to ruin his newly purchased clothes. The first ones he chose for himself. At another booth, he purchased a sailor's capo to protect him from the wind and rain, and the stares of Joanna, who was looking for her son. Of the changes in attire, Jargon's feet, freed from leather shoes and touching the morning's cold sand and rough seaside stones, were the most gratifying. Instead of spending money on food, the boy climbed onto the rocks protruding from the water and plucked off a few clams attached to them. He ate the gelatinous creatures, raw, sipping on rainwater collected on top of the rock. Jargon's ever-present fear had finally left him. The prospect of living alone no longer frightened him. The matter of survival in the wilderness seemed quite ordinary, and the choices made by Marigold only the right ones. With his hands bruised and burning from the salt, and a broken fingernail, Jargon made his way down the ice ramp to the beach. He sat on the sand near the ship under construction and waited for the arrival of the chief designer, or Morton. In the meantime, he sketched the hotel he would like to build someday. The biggest problem was the poles submerged in the water. The boy had no idea how thick they should be, how many to place, how deep to dig into the muddy bottom. He didn't notice someone had approached him and looked at his sketch.
Nice design, but not sturdy enough. The storm would blow it away.
I think so too. What if I add a second platform here?
Here you need cover from the waves. Otherwise, the walls will not withstand the pressure of the water. Better extend this roof so that the wind doesn't carry it away. The platform needs to be higher, at least 4 cubits above the water level. People don't like to get their shoes wet.
Thank you. You have helped me a lot. I am working at Cintra's architect's office. And this hotel. I'd like to build it someday. For outliers like me.
The laughter of a man of about 40, black-haired, bearded, blasted by wind and rain, made Jargon smile as well. The man looked friendly and open-minded, more trustworthy than all the sailors that Jargon had met in the port.
At sea, it's easier to be alone than to find a good company. I thought you were local, eh? As if this port wasn't awful enough, a couple of really messed up guys ran off yesterday. The judge went berserk, the guards got fired, Morton disappeared. What a terrible day.
Are you looking for Morton? Aren't you by any chance the chief constructor?
That is me. Do you know where is Morton?
Morton was suspected of smuggling or something like that. I saw him getting arrested and taken to the watchtower.
The torrent of bad language that flowed from the man's mouth so surprised Jargon that the boy sat on the sand with his mouth wide open and a coal in his hand. How could someone so calm and nice become so furious in one moment?
I told him so many times to be careful. What a bad luck. Where am I going to find someone to replace him? Kid, will you be here for a while?
For a few days, yes.
Great. Will you watch over the workers on my behalf? A new caretaker will arrive in 2 days, but to recruit him, I have to go to Horn. So, what would you say? Would you help a man in need?
But I have no experience in such type of job. Till now I have worked in the office, made drawings.
The constructor picked up Jargon from the ground and shook him to get rid of the sand. It was immediately apparent that the man possessed uncommon strength, and because of his attacks of fury, refusing him did not seem a safe option.
Oh, it is really easy. I organize materials and everything. You only prepare daily reports. And when I come back, I'll give you some training. Wouldn't you like to see the real projects?
Sure, I would like to. That's why I was sitting here, hoping to meet you. My dream is to build ships, not houses.
Look, a perfect deal then. In 2 days, I come with a caretaker, and you watch over the workers. They need to nail the boards to the deck. Really simple task. This is a daily report. You need to count the workers at 7 a.m. and after lunch. Their lunchtime is at 1 p.m. After 2 p.m., you are free. That's it.
Jargon slowly nodded his head. The description seemed far too optimistic to him, but the prospect of gaining experience in making money and insight into the designs of real ships convinced the boy.
See, only 7 of them came today. The rest got into brawls at night, or got drunk, and don't want to show their faces to me. But it doesn't matter, right, boys? By this evening, these partition walls are supposed to be standing straight up like maidens at a party. As if the delay in the work wasn't annoying enough, there's still this incident with Morton. I have to check the tools and materials myself. Off you go, little one. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Concerned about her son's all-day absence and his new clothes, Joanna got up extraordinarily before 6 a.m. to watch her only child. She chatted at his bedroom door with a mug of strong tea and 2 toasts, and every few minutes glanced through the crack between the door and the doorframe. Jargon was asleep in his bed, covered up to his neck with a blanket. Only after half an hour did Joanna realize that the shoes Jargon had placed against the wall in the evening had disappeared. The furious woman rushed into her son's room. Her hand penetrated the illusion left behind, and her eyes came across a hastily written note. The first thing Joanna noticed was a distinct lack of care in the formation of the letters. From it, Joanna learned that Cyril gave Jargon extra coins for food and organized lessons for him that started at 7 a.m. Joanna sat down on the long, cooled bed and leaned her head against the wall. She didn't know what to do with herself in the empty apartment. Jargon sat on the cliff and admired the gilding of the autumn sky. 1 meat pie, a former snack, now standed for his entire breakfast. Instead of his favorite compote water, no cakes nor chocolate desserts. Jargon plucked a blade of grass and tried to whistle at it. He had seen neighborhood boys do the same many times, but failed to make a sound other than blowing.
Sea people always get up early. They sleep at noon and then drink for half the night. I didn't introduce myself yesterday. Everett, nice to meet you.
Jargon. I look forward to working with you.
Everett pulled Jargon by his shirt, as he had done the previous day, and set him on his feet.
Here, the niceties are out of place. You address everyone by name or function. Depending on the situation, let's go, count the workers.
They walked down to the beach and noticed the workers around the ship. Jargon's first job seemed less scary than he imagined and even quite interesting. At the sight of the chief, the workers lined up in a crooked line. Each heard what his task was, and Jargon watched the carbon scratches on a piece of board.
After lunch, you do the same thing. In the meantime, you make sure they are working. If any materials arrive, have them stored in the shed. I'll see you in 2 days.
And what tasks should I assign them?
When they finish nailing the deck, and they probably won't, let them get on with the tar sealing.
Not half an hour had passed since Everett's departure, and the workers had abandoned the post in favor of cups of bones and beer. Confused, Jargon tried to find out what had happened, but the men ignored him like a fly buzzing near his ear. In an act of desperation, Jargon doused everyone with water, but it had no effect. The boy watched helplessly as the group, outnumbered and outgunned, cheerfully abandoned beer in favor of samagon. The bones were joined by harmonicas, and the workplace turned into an inferior tavern. Jargon decided to nail the boards himself. From the ice, he built a staircase, leaning against the side of the ship. He grabbed the rope hanging from the side and very slowly climbed up to the deck. The abyss of the hold beneath Jargon made his head spin for a moment, but his hands clenched tightly on the rope to keep his body upright. Piles of crudely assembled boards, boxes of nails and hammers, enough materials and tools to start work. Jargon's hands were shaking. Longboard slipped from his hands, and the hammer hit somewhere nearby instead of hitting the head of the nail. Fortunately, not in the protruding parts of the boy's body. After a few minutes of struggle, Jargon managed to nail the first board next to the ones already attached. He noticed with horror that the gap between the boards was too large to be sealed with tow and tar. The boy looked around for a crowbar. The taunts and obscene chants of the workers irritated him more and finally gave him an idea to solve the stalemate situation. As if nothing had happened, Jargon continued nailing the boards. He tried to arrange them as evenly as possible, but the two-finger gap no longer stressed him out. He managed to finish one row and, tired, sweaty, with his fingers full of splinters, he admired his work leaning on the crowbar he had found.
What the hell did you do?
Counted you at 7 am. All the work here is yours.
Only after a few minutes did the workers realize that Jargon was right. They will get punished for boards nailed crookedly. They will not receive their salary.
Are you going back to work or should I continue?
The worker took Jargon's hammer by force. Jargon reached for a second hammer and 2 nails. More builders appeared on the side, so the boy moved back closer to the mast as a precaution.
Tie up the pest.
Big wave. How's it down there? Not too wet.
He laughed at the worker who he had pushed off the ovipositor with water. He laughed at those who tried to avoid ice spears and snowballs.
You work or return home today with frostbitten limbs. And without the salary. Your choice.
Seemingly carefree, he passed the men who wished him the worst, grabbed a rope, and walked up the previously created stairs, wet from the ice melting under the sun. He was hit in the back by a wooden wedge and fell from a slippery structure, but managed to stay on the rope. Wondering whether the impact would bruise him, Jargon poured water over the marks of drunkenness and idleness.